On today's Locked On Cavs, who is the team's biggest competition for the 2 seed in the East, and other key questions for the post-All-Star break run? That's all coming up today on Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens, as always, for his work on production. Evan, before we get into our main show today, which is going to be the first of a two-parter, we're going to look at 6 big questions, 6 things that are going to decide the rest of the Cavs' regular season. All-Star Weekend came and went. Very quiet on the Cavs front. All quiet on the Cavs front. What was your Cavs All-Star Weekend highlight?
Oh, golly.
I think there's one answer, to be clear. I think there's
Donovan
one
Mitchell
answer.
Wearing the Money Merrill jersey for me.
Yes.
I think that's
is it.
Or maybe...
No, that's it. That's it.
Small consolation. I'm going to be talking with Jackson Flickinger. He went there during All-Star. He could have got credentials from Fear the Sword as well, but I know he had them from right down Euclid, but he did tell me that, Donovan Mitchell wasn't about his future, which, it's kind of nice that there's a change of pace for once when Donovan Mitchell's, let loose in front of the national media.
I think it's just the Money Merrill thing because, number one, that jersey was that was cool. The whole team was making a big deal about the fact that that Sam Merrill, would have been a good representative. Secondly, that Cavs jersey, it's the City Edition one from the year that Garland made and Allen made the All-Star team, the All-22 season. Obviously, the season kind of ends in
the slam cover when the Cavs hosted All-Star.
Yes, which I have. Our friend Jimmy Longo took. I have that framed in my living room.
Framed above my desk.
Yeah, there it is. Shout out Jimmy.
Go. Shout out to James.
That jersey is the best jersey the Cavs have had in some time, and it should just be in their rotation. That is just a thing I firmly believe. That jersey just is good, and a lot of the Cavs jerseys are not good, and that one actually is. So to see it, and to see Donovan Mitchell wearing it, despite the fact that he never wore it because he wasn't on the team, was cool. I digress.
Yeah, it was cool. I'm not trying to be a hater or disagree with you on that, but let me push back real quick. Would you want them to wear it in the exact same color scheme, or would you want them to add modern adaptations where it's the darker wine and more of the Vegas-y gold instead of the traditional mustardy yellow that they had in that uniform?
I'm cool with the mustardy yellow, but I just think that jersey's better than that structure of that jersey is just better than anything. It has texture, it has an actual design, and it isn't just a lot of the crap Nike makes now. So
I was just curious because I saw somebody do a mock-up of the the first LeBron blue jerseys in that era, and they swapped out the navy for black, they darkened the wine, they added the Vegas gold trim, which I think was already on there, but either way, I'm it's not too bad. I am curious, though, speaking of uniforms, it is rumored, and I've kind of been hearing whispers the Cavs are going to be a throwback team next year, and with how deep and diverse Cleveland's jersey history is, I wonder how far they wind back the clock, or if they are bold enough to wear those first LeBron-era jerseys for certain nights.
Yeah, we will see if that comes to fruition. But main topic of today's show, first question in segment 1. Who is the Cavs' biggest competition for the 2 seed? Evan, I think there are 2 ways to answer this. I think you could answer this in terms of who's actually going to give them the biggest push, and then who would be the team that, if they are the 3 seed, would be the biggest threat to the Cavs as the 2 seed. If you look at just for what it's worth, the playoff probability report that Basketball Reference does has the Cavs as a sizable favorite. They get the 2 seed in 87.8% of their simulations. They do 10,000 simulations and update it daily. The Knicks have the next best chance of getting the 2 seed at 4.9%. The Bucks a 4.3% chance of getting the 2 seed. Knicks with a 32.4% chance of getting the 3 seed, and the Bucks at 31.2% of getting the 3 seed. So, Evan, this was your question when we each picked 3. Who's your biggest threat?
So it is interesting. I'm pulling up the strength of schedule as we talk just to give you an idea of who these teams play, but they're not. I mean, obviously, Boston isn't within striking distance of Cleveland, so is Milwaukee as well. I think Philadelphia, depending on whether or not Joel Embiid plays again this season, could be in the mix too. Even the Knicks, like it is, the Cavs have built like a 2.5 game gap over Milwaukee, a 4 game lead over New York, 4.5 over Philadelphia. So they have a bit of a cushion. They are 6 back from Boston, and so for me, like looking at remaining strength of schedule, like Milwaukee has the third hardest schedule left in the NBA. Like they have to play the Celtics twice, the Timberwolves, the Thunder twice, the Clippers twice, the Suns and the Knicks both once. Whereas you have a team like New York, who is just ahead of Cleveland. They still have to play the Celtics twice, Thunder once. The Cavs and the Knicks both have to play again. They play the Bucks and the Pelicans too. Like they have some tough competition, but to me, I would say just on paper, the biggest threat is probably New York, just because I don't know how well this Doc Rivers experiment is going to go for Milwaukee. I think they are getting shredded defensively still, and they think they're 4-7 or something like that in his first 11 games of the coach. I don't know. They have a losing record with him at the helm so far, so maybe the Bucks take a bit of a step back and ends up being like, let's just say in the second round, Boston versus Milwaukee. If you got Cavs Knicks in the second round, like with a trip to the Eastern Conference Finals on the line, something conference finals, which is something Donovan Mitchell's never experienced, that would give me, I mean, that'd be exciting for me as somebody who just loves the game. But like, if you're a Cavs fan or in this team, like that gives you pause, just because like New York is a very good team, even if they are very banged up right now. Like once they get healthy and maybe start gelling again, like they could be a threat to push Cleveland for the 2 seed, and also maybe a team Cleveland wants to avoid come playoff time, especially in the second round.
I think it's the Knicks. I think Milwaukee you have to respect on both ways you could answer this, just in the sense that they have Giannis and they have Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And star power sometimes in the NBA just does win out. Seeing Giannis in a playoff series, if that's what it came to for Cleveland, would be a real test, and that would be good for them to go through in some way, I think, in one way, shape, or the other. That's kind of the outcome that would be, I mean, in some ways more fun for us to cover, I think. But the Knicks just have the recipe of things that I think can just press on the Cavs buttons. They have all the big wings. They have the rebounding stuff. And there would be like the mental component of, okay, how do you overcome what happened last year? How do you overcome what went wrong for you last year? How you lost last year in pretty embarrassing fashion? There's a lot that would go into that. And I think in terms of, I think the Cavs are just going to get the 2 seed. There's nothing in what they are that makes me think a fall off is coming that's going to really open the door for someone else. But in terms of who could push them and kind of maybe make them uncomfortable in a playoff series, I would. It's wild to say that I would, if I'm Cleveland, rather see a team with Giannis and Dame than a team with not Giannis and Dame. But the Knicks just have all the components of things that I think can really press on some of the Cavs' weaknesses on top of some of the stuff from last year.
Yeah, and also I think for Cleveland's sake, sure, Doc Rivers coaching the team and playing nothing but veterans instead of what Adrian Griffin was doing with a mix of young guys and the veterans is different, but the Cavs a tentative formula for success to beat Milwaukee, and that was without Evan Mobley or Darius Garland on the floor. Like the MO and plan is you throw Isaac Okoro at Dame, you make Dame frustrated and uncomfortable as often as you can. Like I forget the numbers, but they're not great what Damian Lillard's shooting numbers were when Isaac Okoro was his primary defender. So there's a recipe for success there. Obviously, Boston you want to avoid as much as possible because they have the 2 J's. I think Porzingis does produce interesting matchups for Jared Allen and Evan Mobley to handle, and also like Drew Holiday is a grinder, and when the game slows down, I think he's a lot more effective. But I agree with your take on New York. Like you still have OG Anunoby, like he is banged up right now with an elbow injury, but he will be back sooner rather than later. I think there's obviously just the external pressure of this is the team that ended our season last year. Can we excise the demons and get past it? And then you have DiVincenzo, who is a grinder. You have Josh Hart. Hartenstein, I think, is very good. But I like their acquisition of Burks and Bogdanovich. Like the Knicks had a pretty good like trade deadline just to kind of maximize what they have, and also Jalen Brunson is really, really good. And so I don't know, if you're Cleveland, you want to try to hope and pray you avoid New York. But if it does end up being Knicks Cavs in the second round, if you're Cleveland, you hope at least you have the 2 seed, so you open the series at home versus having to go to the Garden, where the Cavs experienced that last year. Like they were rattled by how raucous that crowd was, and you kind of want to kind of build momentum at home before you head to New York. And I think that would be a little bit more of a recipe for success. But I don't know. It would be really fun basketball for me to see, like, both the off the court and on court narratives that come with it, of like seeing these two teams collide in the second round instead of having a first round series like last year.
All right, up next, Darius Garland. What's going on with him? Is he the best version of himself? The answer is no. We'll explain why that matters and where Garland can get better after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Grammarly. No matter what kind of work you do, how you communicate is key. All those emails, reports, and presentations are equally important to the collaboration needed to get things done, and Grammarly can help. 96% of Grammarly users report that Grammarly helps them craft more impactful writing. It works across 500,000 apps and websites. By understanding your writing and context, Grammarly provides relevant, personalized suggestions. Their tone suggestions help you navigate even the most difficult work conversations. You can save time with one click and go from editing drafts in hours to seconds. 93% of professionals using Grammarly Premium report that it helps them get more work done. It is the gold standard of responsible AI with 14 years of experience and just about every IT certification under the sun. Data privacy and security are woven into the foundation of Grammarly. Make a bigger impact at work with Grammarly. Sign up and download for free at Grammarly.com/podcast. That's Grammarly, Grammarly.com/podcast. Easier said, done right with Grammarly. All right, so Darius Garland, I think, Evan, would it be fair to say he has been the most underwhelming Cavalier this year? That he has been the one who is, I think, more than a Mobley, considering Mobley's late surge, more than just about anyone else, he has been the most underwhelming, lackluster guy on the team this year. Is that a fair statement?
I think that is a completely fair statement. He had big games to start the season. I think he had bigger moments when he was 100%, not maybe dealing with the rust and the physical fatigue that comes with returning from injury, but it just hasn't really clicked Garland like we had hoped. It's something we had touched on before he had the jaw surgery or the injury against Boston. You were starting to see like glimpses of Garland and Mitchell meshing together again on the floor, something that was surprisingly a little bit lost for the Cavs to start the season after they found it so quickly last year. And since he's come back from injury, it's still kind of been a clunky fit. I think the Cavs have found ways to make it a little bit more advantageous within this new offensive flow, with him mostly playing off the ball to start games with the ball in Mitchell's hand. Sure, like you let him run the offense sometimes too, but and then empowering him to run as like the lead guard next to Karis LeVert, the bench units to start the second quarter. Like there are small building blocks the Cavs are putting in place, but it's kind of been all smoke and not a lot of fire right now. Maybe a couple flashes in the pan rather too, but yeah, I think that's a fair assessment for sure. Like Evan Mobley, disappointing to start the year, but like everything's starting to click and he's just been so exciting to watch. Whereas for Garland, you're like, okay, any second now. Like, hopefully you do something other than putting up like 17 and 2 on very poor shooting numbers.
To be sympathetic and empathetic to him, I will say, if you wanted to craft a way for a guy to have a really uneven season, this is kind of how you would do it. He plays the first game, misses the next 4, misses one about a month later, about 2 weeks later after that. And then the injury in Boston happens, and he misses all that time. He loses all that weight. He is basically like he's able to ramp up a little bit when he comes back, but this run up before the All-Star break in some ways was just like him getting his sea legs back under, was getting back into rhythm. So you're kind of like just waiting for him to actually get a chance to actually build into a season in a way that he really didn't before this. The numbers, I think, tell you that it hasn't been the most effective year. He is at a career low from 3. His volume is down from the last 2 seasons and more in line with his rookie year and his second year. That has changed a little bit. And Evan, to me, if we're spinning this forward, that's where I think this starts to get better for him. Is we have seen in recent weeks and before the All-Star break, his shot profile coming back from injury looked different. He was taking more threes. He was taking nearly half of his shots from 3 on a lot of nights. In the last 3 games before the break, 5 of his 11 shots were from 3, and they win at Toronto. In the loss against Philly, 8 of his 16 shots were from 3, and then in the win against the Bulls, 5 of his 10 shots were from 3. Now, is he making every shot at the clip you would like? No, but I do think you're starting to see the gears turn towards where you kind of want him to be. And if I'm being optimistic about him, the way he played, not in terms of full execution, but the way it looked and the way that what the shot profile looked like, to me indicates that maybe something better is coming for him. But that's obviously, I think, an optimistic read of it.
I mean, it's perfectly fine to be optimistic about it. I think there is a moment where he will start to find his footing again. Like you said, his sea legs is a great way to put it. And just slowly start to put everything back together on the floor and kind of show you the player he was before this injury. Like, for context, I think people don't realize, like, difficult it is for Garland during this recovery process, but as soon as his jaw repaired, his jaw was wired shut, and then he had to monitor his heart rate. He couldn't get too physically active, which means he can't lift weights. He can't really run or do a lot of aerobic exercises to stay in shape. Can't really put up a lot of shots to kind of keep his rhythm and just kind of keep maybe the hot streak he had going before the injury. So you're more or less hitting pause on everything for 6 weeks, and you're starting, I wouldn't say it's square one, but you're starting closer to the start of the season, shaking off the rust, the weight that he lost, which was 12 pounds, and then he's slowly acclimating, adding weight back on, as he shared with me. But like, it's going to be a process. And like you said, I think it's encouraging that we're seeing signs that he's starting to build a little bit of that momentum heading into the All-Star break. And you always have to say, like, you can only go up from where Darius Garland is at right now, which isn't a terrible, terrible place. It's just been kind of one note and at times, which is disappointing in the grand scheme of it all. But when it comes to like room for improvement, like, Garland will be fine, because historically speaking, like, he maybe takes a little bit to bounce back from an injury, but he more often than not does. This one was just, the most unprecedented, because he told me, other than the eye, like, this is the worst injury he's ever suffered, just because like your entire world changes and you realize, like, I can't eat food for the next 6 weeks and I have to eat everything blended in a smoothie, which sounds horrible, especially when you're in Paris during that.
I think the way to answer this question more than anything else, and kind of ask it very bluntly, is, do you believe in what Darius Garland is? Like, if you're going to be an optimist and say, okay, this is going to get better, that the second half of the year, this run up to the playoffs is going to be the best stretch of his year, it's, do you believe in him as a player, as a talent? For me, the answer is yes, and I think the Cavs need him. Segment 3 is going to be, who is the second most important player behind Donovan Mitchell for this team? I think there's a case for Garland, and I think it's just, you need the ball handling, you need what he is. It speaks to the talent and what this team has been, that they've accomplished so much without him at his best. But I would say, like, the way this continues on, I think involves the version of Garland we've seen, and I think that he's capable of. And I'm just a believer in what he is, and I just kind of, maybe this is just like going to end up being a weird lost year for him, but I just think too highly of him for that to necessarily be just like a fully lost year for him, and him taking such a big step back, it feels like.
Yeah, I think it's big loss is a good way to put it, like a lost year for him rather. And I think it's just frustrating because it's kind of been indicative of this entire Cavs season, where like one guy comes back, a guy or two goes out. It's constantly been at the start of the season, with Garland being the guy who is really struggling with it, because the Cavs are playing a dramatically different way than they were like when he was still out there compared to when he came back. And so it's going to be an adjustment, but I agree with you. Like, your take on that, he will be fine. We'll see, for this season at least, the best basketball of this little window of his career right now, post All-Star break and leading into the playoffs. And ideally when the minute restriction itself is lifted by JP Bickerstaff and the medical staff. And we'll kind of see where it goes from there. But yeah, it's just frustrating because these are precious opportunities. You don't get really any chances to practice during the regular season as much. And it's kind of, you're teaching him how to play on the fly. And that can be a little frustrating at times, which is, empathetic wise, you understand, but also like, yeah, I think he'll be fine too.
All right, after this, who is the second most important player on the Cavs? Is it Donovan Mitchell? Is it Evan Mobley? Is it Jarrett Allen? Is it Sam Merrill? Is Evan going to get weird and say Sam Merrill? We'll ask Evan. We'll open up with his thoughts on this after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver who likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around at the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. It has class-exclusive Google built-in, your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and the Google Play Store are built right in to the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. There's also Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder, has room for up to 8 in expansive cargo capacity and advanced reliable 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop now at nissanusa.com. All right, so Evan, if Donovan Mitchell is the most important player shaping the rest of the season, who's number 2?
So, yeah, you confused me heading into this segment because I had noted in the text, like, it's clear Mitchell's the number 1 player. Like,
yeah.
But he said, could it be Donovan Mitchell? So, for full disclosure, I texted Chris.
Did I? I just blacked out. I just blacked out, yeah.
You're just in the heat of the moment. I get it. So, Donovan Mitchell is by and far Cleveland's best player. He's in the MVP conversation, at least locally and within the locker room. He is Cleveland's best player night in and night out. And now it's like fair to question, like, okay, who is going to be the Robin to his Batman, or maybe like in a Justice League sense or more of a best friend sense, it's the Superman to his Batman or something like that. But or Spider-Man, and if we want to go with Donovan being Spider, we could do Tony Stark in the MCU or something like that pre-snap, Endgame snap. But it's a fair question, and to me, I think it's Evan Mobley, just because Jarrett Allen does have a ceiling to his game. I think Darius Garland, we touched on this quite a bit in the last segment, is like been a little up and down since he's come back from injury, and like he has the potential to take the reins as the number 2, but like Evan Mobley's two-way impact and the fact that he's like so aggressive offensively, whether it's scoring wise, shooting 3-pointers, passing and moving the ball, being the primary ball handler, and like engaging in fast break scenarios for Cleveland, like he has started to put a lot of it together for me in my eyes. That makes me say like, yeah, he could be the dude that becomes the number 2 next to Donovan Mitchell and could help decide or swing a playoff series in their favor.
I'm torn on this question because
it's a tricky one, just because like they have 4 talented players at the top, and like no discredit to Jarrett Allen, but Jarrett Allen is 4th of those 4 players in the top 4.
You could just make an argument, I think. Well, you could even, I think, make an argument for Allen just from like a dependability standpoint and availability.
That's fair.
Like there's like that's not the argument I would make, but I think, or I'm gonna go. I think it comes down to Garland and Mobley.
Mm-hmm.
The case for Garland would be secondary ball handler, will relieve pressure. I'm gonna go Garland. I'm just gonna make the case for Garland, and I think that's where I would lean, just because the team is gonna, I think, run. If I'm projecting where the issues come and what the challenges are, Mobley, the defense is already really good, and like has been great without Mobley even being at his best or even available.
Mm-hmm.
Mobley's offense is certainly going to unlock a lot that I think makes the case for him, and maybe that's just the reason to pick him. But Garland is going to be the one that if the Cavs see 2 on the ball if Mitchell gets jammed up, if they just need a pressure release valve on offense and it makes the offense like function in a way that it didn't in the playoffs last year and keeps everything moving and gets the ball to the shooters and maybe has some scoring outbursts, Garland's kind of got to be the guy, I think. That's where I like it. Mobley is the right two-way answer, and certainly his shooting, if this is real, and we're going to talk about him in the second part of this series, tomorrow's show. If the leap is happening, he's probably the answer, but I think there's a real case for Garland. And it's no disrespect to Jared Allen, who's going to be really important, but I think it has to be Garland and Mobley. And Evan, maybe it's because there's some unknown with both of them. I think that to me is part of this, is that there's a range of outcomes for this year for both guys, and I think that makes them harder to project. Whereas Jared Allen, we're just like, we know what you are.
And yeah, again, no discredit to Jared Allen. He really stepped up and showcased like how good he is when like the Cavs call on his number and need to lean on him more, especially when Evan Mobley was out. But I think that's a pretty accurate assessment on just like there's a lot of unknown. Like with Mobley, we're suddenly seeing like this really aggressive offensive attack and approach from him. We're seeing him just like, maybe not be a guy who is, I don't want to say chasing his stats, but like he is putting up much more. No, he's putting up higher numbers on a higher volume and much more like with the ball in his hands versus just kind of being a guy who's relying on the guard setting him up. But with Garland, like we kind of know like what he can be when he's hitting at his apex, like replicated his career best numbers when he was an all-star for the first time next to Donovan Mitchell in their first season together. And there's just been some bumps and bruises and just bangs up along the road that like kind of make you think like, okay, what do we got here now? So like it's what we don't know versus what we do know, and we're not seeing the full picture in front of us. And I think it'll clear up more once these guys are off their minute restriction. I know Kobe Altman said during his mid-season media availability, the hope is that they will both be off of them when they return from the All-Star break, or hopefully soon after the All-Star break is over. But we'll obviously see what the next steps are and how JB Bickerstaff and the medical staff tackle this. But it is an interesting just kind of question to like think about and mull over. Like, okay, who will be the number two? Because that'll be really tricky for the Cavs come playoff time, because Donovan Mitchell did have that meltdown last season, like he did against the Mavericks the year before that when he was still at the Jazz. And there are going to be moments where defenses lock in on Donovan Mitchell and try to make life really hard for them. And the Cavs need another player to step up. And during the regular season, it was Jared Allen. But like you said, we know what Jared Allen's game is. We know where the limit. And now you have to say, like, okay, is it going to be Darius Garland or Evan Mobley that's going to step up? And that creates the uncertainty for me. Is like, who's it going to be? Like, are they going to become a little bit more one-dimensional come playoff time when the pressure's on? Or are they going to have the guys that they hope step up finally do step up?
I mean, it could be matchup dependent. First round, if you're getting fair. Indiana, maybe it's Garland. And maybe it's just like, hey, you need him to work some things out. Or if it's the Knicks in round two, I think that's maybe more of a Mobley thing than it is a Garland thing, even if there's some risk of Mobley getting attacked on defense and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of different ways this could go. You just hope they both stay healthy and get there. All right, tomorrow's show here. Yeah. And just Garland looking right would be a big deal, is where Mobley looks, I think, quite good already. Tomorrow's show, here's the things we are going to get into to give you a tease. The next three topics as part of these six. Is it the Evan Mobley leap happening? George Niang or Dean Wade as the eighth guy for the playoff rotation? And Isaac Okoro, is his play good enough right now for him to matter in the playoffs and also get him paid? We'll talk about those things on tomorrow's Locked On Cavs. More coming this week. We'll have game coverage for you too, covering Cavs Magic and Cavs on Thursday, going into Friday, and Cavs 76ers Friday going into Saturday. Until then, I'm Chris. That's Evan. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. We'll talk to you tomorrow.